What's happening? Stuff about money, loyal listeners. Xavier and I want to thank you for your continued support. We get a lot of questions from our clients about teaching kids about money. Clients will come to us and say, "Hey, I want to teach my high schooler about money," or "My kids are at an age where I feel like I need to start teaching them about money. What do you recommend? What do you suggest?" So in this episode, we talk about three strategies that we want to start concept that we want to start instilling in our kids about money. Stick around for the Langyap conversation that we have at the end of the recording. Langyap, that's something extra for free. So three strategies to teach our kids with a little bit of Langyap. Again, thanks for listening. Hey, if y'all find value in our episodes, please go ahead and share them with someone who you think would benefit from our conversations. Thanks again.
Welcome back to Stuff About Money. I'm Xavier Angel, certified financial planner, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Erik Garcia, certified financial planner. How you doing today, Erik?
Man, I am doing good, Xavier. It is a pleasure to join you today. We are recording. It is festival season in New Orleans. This is my favorite time of the year. So,
I can
good.
I can tell.
How can you
You're
tell?
looking a little laid back today. You got your
Laid
shorts
back.
on, your button-down shirt.
hmm hmm
Are you taking off early and headed out to the festivals?
No, no festival. My daughter's got field day, so I'm gonna head out to field day after this. But no festival. But Jazz Fest is going on while we're recording. By the time you hear this, y'all, it'll Jazz Fest will have already passed. But we will be headed out to Jazz Fest for the second weekend. So looking forward.
This is one of the best times of the year. You
Man,
mentioned
it
that,
is.
but I got to reiterate that because we've
Yeah.
got festivals going on for the next 2 months.
Yeah.
So great time to be down here in New Orleans.
Well, this is springtime is one of my favorites because I love working in the garden. So for me, springtime is it's a great time to just, man, get everything growing again, get everything pretty in the garden again. So I've been spending a lot of time
You
out in the
just
garden.
queuing everything up for me today, huh?
Am I
First
queuing something
festivals,
up for you?
the garden. I'm looking at your garden that you're building or growing in the back of you,
Oh, you like that?
over your
For those
shoulder.
on, yeah, for those listening, you got to go on YouTube to check out my indoor plants. Yeah, I got a bunch more that I'm gonna be that I'm starting at the house right now. My daughter is starting some for me, so we're gonna have this entire backdrop is gonna be live plants. So anyway, gardening. I want to talk about gardening because this is going to lead into our topic today. Our topic today, y'all, is going to be about kids and money and teaching kids about money. And in gardening, there's this term called hardening off plants. Okay, and here's the idea: is that a plant that you start indoors is in a protected environment. It's in a protected ecosystem. There's not a lot of a hardship that plant is experiencing. However, when you take it and you plant it outside in the elements, all of a sudden it's got to deal with heat. It's got to deal with rain. It's got to deal with wind. There's a lot of challenges for that plant. So the hardening off process basically is, how do you slowly expose a plant to the outdoor elements so that it can thrive and flourish when it's in its final spot where you plant it, right? Um, I've
Hmm.
got an avocado that I planted, and I noticed a bunch of the leaves were falling off, turning brown and falling off. So I was talking to, um, one guy who runs a nursery. I was like, "Dude, what's happening with my avocado plant?" He goes, "Well, the problem is it's too hot right now. It's too young. It's still young, so the leaves are just responding to the heat. So what you should do is shade it if you can." So I've got a bamboo in a pot, so I'm shading the plant to try to reduce some of the heat from the sun that's hitting the young plant, causing the leaves to fall off because it still needs to harden a little bit. It's still too young of a plant. So I was thinking about that idea of hardening off plants to this idea of teaching kids about money. Is that we have kids and we get a lot of questions. I get a lot of questions from clients about, "Hey, Erik, what's a good resource to teach my kids about money? Hey, could you meet with my kids and teach them about money?" And I had an experience recently with one of my kids, and nothing negative. They were going to a dentist appointment, and um, I was sending her on her own I put some money on her debit card, and I was like, "Oh, I should go with her to the dentist." And I said, no, this is a good experience for her. She's gonna have to go. She's gonna see how much the dentist costs for one. She's gonna have to pay the front desk And I want her to have that experience because one day she's going to have to go off to college and be on her own. And I want her to start having some of those experiences. And I made this connection between gardening with this, hardening off plants to, man, we need to harden off our kids. We need to start exposing them to these financial experiences or events that decisions, right, that they're going to have to make one day.
Mm.
Because as parents, we want to raise, or I think the goal, and I don't want to be presumptuous here, but the goal of parents is we want to raise independent humans who can operate in the world. And they're in this protective environment, like a new plant in a nursery, right? And then one day they're not going to be in a protective environment. They're going to be out in the world. They're going to make a lot of decisions. Now, this podcast, we're just talking about money, but they're going to be in the world and they're going to have to make decisions on their own. So we have to start as parents from a financial standpoint. We want to start exposing them to these elements that are going to have to cause them to make decisions with their money. That's what I want to talk about
And
today.
that's a great experience for her because she's going to experience having to pull out that debit card, to ask those questions, to figure out how much it cost. Um, making sure that, okay, do I have enough on my card, and independence.
Yeah.
This is teaching her independence as well. And for
So
those
here,
that don't know, so she is 17.
17.
Okay.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Now, this is a process that you just don't do with your high schoolers, right? This is something that I think we start as parents when the kids are young. All right. So in this podcast, we're not going to get too tactical. Okay. And let me explain what I mean by that. Um, After I say this one part, what we are going to do is we're going to be more strategic. So strategy is, hey, where are we going? Where are we trying to get? What are we trying to accomplish? That's strategy. Tactics is more of what's the actions that we're going to be doing along the way. All right. So this idea of teaching kids about money, where should we start? I think too often as parents, we jump to tactics. We want them to learn something and we want them to learn something now, right? My kid needs to learn how to save. So I'm gonna give him a piggy bank to save in, right? My kid needs to learn how to have a bank account. So we're just gonna go open up a bank account. Okay. But let's take a step back and say strategy. Where are we trying to get? Okay. So I want to talk about three particular areas of money where we want to strategically start teaching our kids and exposing them to these different experiences. And then we'll talk about some tactics in each of those. So if you're good with that, that's how I want to proceed, Xavier.
Let's roll.
All right. All right. So you tracking me on tactics versus strategy?
I got you.
Now, you and I are both fairly strategic individuals. I'm probably a little bit more
Hmm.
strategic. I'm a little bit more like I'm a super long-term um, thinker, but you're probably much better at the tactical side of like, okay, what's the next step? So I think that's one of the reasons why we work well together because I can get lost in the hey man, this is where we're going to be in 20 years, in 15 years, in 10 years, and you're like, bro, we got to get through April. Let's what are we gonna do right now? Um, but you need the strategy so that when you start to implement the tactic, does this make sense? Is this getting us where we are getting? Okay. So the first place we want to get is we want to teach our kids how to earn money, right? How to work for money. Now, we're not talking about any particular age here, and I'm going to leave that to your discretion to kind of know where your kid is. Um, understanding as kids develop, really, young kids, toddlers they can't think abstractly. So just kind of, know where your kid is. But here's the thing. If I want my kid to learn
No.
about money, I've got to find a way for them to have money, right?
Hmm.
If I want to teach someone how to swim, I need to have a pool or the ocean to teach them how to swim in, right? If you want to learn how to ride a bike, what do you need? A bike,
Right.
right? So if I want to teach a kid about money, my kid has to have money for me to start teaching them how to use it wisely.
So earlier on, one of the things that you mentioned was, the age of when you start
Hmm.
working with them and strategizing with them is going to depend on the child, the family, the parents. And we talked a little bit earlier, and it begins as early as they can begin to comprehend things around them and what's going on. I mean, think about it. At 5, 6, 7 years old, they're looking at us and they're watching our habits and they're learning from the habits that or the things that we do on a regular basis. And it's instilled in them the older they get. So your 10-year-old is learning it now and seeing the things that your 17-year-old is doing or your 21-year-old are doing. And they're learning from that.
Yeah, certainly kids will model behavior, but I think you bring up a really good point that I don't think a 3-year-old understands the concept of money. Okay. But I think that a 3-year-old understands the concept of reward. Um,
Hmm.
Maybe it's a star chart. Maybe it's if you do this, then you get a snack. If you do this, you get this toy. Right. So I think as the kids get older, as our kids are getting older, we can start associating, you know, um, uh, we start using money, but just let's talk about currency. Currency is anything of value, anything we can use to exchange, right? So a young kid exchanges good behavior for a snack, right? An older kid
Right.
is going to exchange labor, right? Sweat. My kid's going to pull weeds in the garden
Hmm.
for $20 because they're able to connect that to something that they want to buy or purchase. So we got to be
Right.
creative. So let's talk about different ways kids that we as parents can transfer money to kids. The obvious way is a kid can go work, right? Obviously, that's
Hmm.
going to be older kids. They work, they get a paycheck. That's ultimately what we want our kids to learn, right? You go work, you exchange your
Right.
knowledge, your labor, your skill, and in return, you get cash money that you can buy things with, right? But none of our
Hmm.
kids are of working age. Okay. Um, Other ways we transfer money to kids is through an allowance. Do y'all do
Right.
allowances?
We do. It's more. It's not a spoken allowance, right? We don't label it as an allowance. However, when you clean up or do things around the house, when you get your good grades, then
Yeah.
you have more to be able to do things.
Yes.
So it is associated with good behavior, good grades,
Yeah.
having your room and your bathroom cleaned up by the end of the week.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think allowances should be attached to some type of behavior. Uh,
Hmm.
Otherwise, kids won't attach. They won't attach
Right.
the the cost to get whatever they're trying to get.
Right.
Right.
We have, so I've got a client and I had this conversation with him a couple days ago, and we were discussing some of the things that they do. And so there's a coffee shop about, maybe 200 yards from the school. And so they'll drop their child off at the school. And the child has breakfast and meets up with their friends, and they have these, and then they walk to school together. And so I was asking her, how does she decide how much money she's putting or giving her child to
Mm-hmm.
be able to go to the coffee shop every morning? And so the response was, well, if they're doing their chores around the house, they're doing their studying, they're getting the good grades in school, then we'll allot them $30 per week. We put on their card. They drop them off at the coffee shop, and now the child has to you know, pay attention to how much she's spending. So she
Yeah.
can't go and spend $12 in one day because they're
Mhm.
not going to put money back on that card.
Yeah.
So now it's allowing them to be able to strategize and figure out how much things cost, and I can't spend everything at one time
Yeah.
because it's got to last for 5 days.
Yeah. And if the kid wants, I don't know if the particular parent does this, but if the kid wants more, it's like, okay, what else can we do? Right? What's something
Hmm.
additional that you can do to earn more money? I think we make mistakes sometimes as parents if we have means by just giving our
Hmm.
kids things. I think that
Right.
they lose the connection between work and money. And I hear from so many people. I hear this from clients and just friends who will share these experiences of facing some form of hardship and learning a lesson from it.
Hmm.
And I think that while we're hardening off our kids, I think it's okay for our kids to experience what they would consider hardship, right? I
Hmm.
can't buy
Right.
my mocha latte, vanilla chai, whatever, because I don't
Right.
have enough money. Like, it's too bad. You shouldn't have bought all the muffins the day before with the whatever. I don't, right? So I
And
think,
I think that goes back to that saying. I've heard people say before, whether they're in a grocery store, wherever it may be. I've heard parents ask their children, "Do you think money grows on trees? You know, do you think I'm an ATM machine?" So I think what we're discussing now
hmm,
allows the child to begin to realize that, okay, money just isn't free flowing.
yeah.
You have to work to make money.
Yeah, sometimes we say that as parents, like money doesn't grow on a tree, but we never really connect. Where does money come from? Right? We say that and we expect our kids just to miraculously know mom and dad go and
Hmm.
they grind it out on a daily basis and they have money. Like they might not connect it. So we gotta start teaching our kids about that connection between having money and work, which leads us to the second strategic thing. We've kind of been talking about it already, is this idea of we want our kids to be able to spend wisely. We want them to make good
Hmm.
spending decisions. Um, I think that kids need to start to feel the pain of separation of I have money that can buy me things, and then I bought something and I no longer have that money anymore.
Right. And it's again, it goes back to you're making money. How much money am I putting away, and how much money do I have to spend?
Yeah.
Right. All of that goes hand in hand. So it begins with them watching us. And all too often, Eric, I get clients that come to us, and not all, but there are some clients. We're having these same conversations that we're having today about teaching children. We have those with our
Right.
clients.
Right. Yeah. Well, these are things that we need to learn. And I think you bring up a really good point.
Mhm.
Let me kind of put a pin right here in our conversation and listen up, parents. If you're trying to teach your kids something about money, I would challenge you to ask yourself, to reflect on yourself, like, hey, am I doing this? Like, we want to teach our kids healthy money habits. Are we exhibiting healthy money habits to our kids? Our kids are going to model what we do more than follow the advice that we speak to them. And it's even
Mhm.
more powerful when the words that are coming out of our mouth align with what we're doing with our actions and our behaviors. So if we're saying something, if you're an adult and you're hearing this, don't feel like, oh my God, I've absolutely failed. No, no, it's not too late to start on this journey of like developing healthy habits. And on the contrary, if you're trying to teach your kid that, man, there's nothing more powerful than showing your kid that you are learning a new habit and a new skill. And I think sometimes when we make our money decisions, especially with our kids, there's certain aspects of it that we should be public with our kids. We want
Right.
them to see us doing it,
And
right?
you just said something important. For those that are listening here, don't beat yourself up if you haven't done these things with your children. It's never too late.
Yeah.
I often sit on these as I'm recording with you and then go back and listen to the recordings. I'm speaking and having these conversations with you, but I'm still picking up things out of the conversations that I myself don't do. And I look back on it and I say, okay, you know what? I need to implement this in my household and things that we do. So it's never too late to pick something up you hear and start doing it today.
But yeah, I think we constantly need to be reminded of what we should be doing
Mhm.
with our money. It's easy to get
Right.
distracted, especially in this world where the kids have money to spend, right? They are being bombarded with things to buy, you know, food and clothes and
Lululemon.
makeup and all this stuff, man, is competing for their money's attention, just like ours as adults. What are
Hmm.
they going to spend it on? I was talking to a friend this morning, and I joked with him. It's been a little while since I talked to him, and I joked with him. And my opening comment was, "Hey, have you paid off your Taylor Swift ticket debt yet?" Story is he got kind of in the situation where he had to buy a ticket for Taylor Swift. This was when Taylor Swift played Houston, I think, or Dallas, or one of those
Yeah, it was
Texas
in
cities.
Houston.
It's Houston. It's a common friend of ours. And I think they ended up paying like 2,000 for one ticket or 17 or something, some ridiculous number.
Right.
Um, so anyway, he kind of laughed. He goes, "Yeah, yeah, that was a lot of money." He goes, "Man, my girls want to go to the concert in New Orleans in October." And I said, "You're going to drop that kind of money to take them to the concert again?" He goes, "Ah, man, I don't know." He goes, "I was thinking about it, and I went back to him. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll buy tickets for you, but all your summer work money is going to go towards the ticket." All of a sudden, he said his girls kind of got a little bit more pensive, like, well, they kind of started pushing back a little bit, right? And I was like, man, that's brilliant. That was a brilliant conversation to have with them. Even though sometimes as parents
Right.
we can afford to buy something for our kids, we still shouldn't. We need to start hardening them off. So all of a sudden, his girls started associating, well, I'm going to work all summer for one night. It didn't
And
seem as
they
attractive.
understand, right. And they knew what the cost of those tickets. So the tickets were $1,800 is what he wound up spending for one ticket. And so I'm sure they're sitting there looking at it and thinking, okay, this is how much I know I made last summer. This is what I'm going to make this summer. Do I really want to spend all of that money going to the Taylor Swift concert? Because now I can't do the other things that I want to do.
Yeah.
And I
Now
think
look,
that is a great lesson.
parents, before you think like Eric is so draconian, he's making his kids pay for everything. No, you do it within reason, right? Maybe you meet your kids halfway. Like, hey, look, this is a lot of money, and I know you're working for 750 an hour or whatever, $10 an hour during the summer, and I'm not going to make you pay for the entire ticket, but we have to start we have to start coaching our kids to recognize the true cost of things, and then letting them associate that with the labor that it took to get the money to buy those things, because then they start prioritizing, and then they start asking questions. Do I really want is to spend money on this? Is it really worth it to me? They have to start making those budgeting decisions, and if we don't start teaching our kids that soon, they're going to go off in the world, and it's going to be hard for them to flourish and
Yeah.
thrive. And the lessons are going to be harder and more consequential if they learn it as an adult as opposed to as a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. The older they get, the harder it becomes for them to reset and say, okay, I need to change my ways. This is what I've been doing. Now let me change it and start focusing here. My attention on saving money, spending less on frugal things. I think one of your pillars, the third pillar of in your pillars to financial
Security.
um, security
Yeah.
is don't do anything foolish with your money.
That's
And
actually not
I
one of the
think
pillars. That's actually, but yes, don't do anything foolish. It's one of the three things. How do you have financial success? The last one is don't do anything foolish with your money. Now, foolish is a very values oriented, very subjective. Okay.
right, because foolish is going to be different for
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
What may be foolish to me isn't going to be foolish to Eric or Maureen or whomever it may be. So it is subjective.
Some people think I'm crazy for the amount of money I spend on my plants. That's all right. It's important to me. I want to say one more thing about spending before we go on to the third strategy, if you will, is I think we as parents need to withhold certain judgment from what our kids spend their money on. Um, and we talk about this idea of what's foolish for us might not be foolish for someone else, right? I often hear, and I've said this, I'm guilty of this. Like, I think that's a silly thing to spend your money on, right? It's silly for me, but it might not be silly for them. I think our questions should be, hey, do you think that that's a smart thing to spend your money on? I do. Okay, then let them spend it. And then if we really think it was really silly, we come back later, an hour later, or 6 hours later the next day and say, hey, I'm just curious. How do you feel about your purchase that you made yesterday or earlier today? right? So what we're doing is we're teaching them just to be a little bit more thoughtful, but we're trying to do it in a less judgmental way. Obviously, there's some things that maybe we just deem that that's just inappropriate. You shouldn't be buying it. That's too much money. I'm not going to let you make that mistake. But in general, right, we're trying to create a safe place for our kid to make a mistake. We want them to make decisions that
Hmm.
are that have less consequences than when they're an
Impact.
adult.
Right.
So we want to teach them to be thoughtful about their spending. So, hey, do you think that's a good
Right.
thing to spend your money on? Is there something you'd rather spend it on? And then after the fact, hey, how do you feel about that purchase? And maybe it's right after the fact, right? Sometimes we have buyer's regret immediately. And the idea is to get them to be more thoughtful the next time.
Right.
All right.
Because that gets them thinking.
Let's move on to our third strategy here, right? We talked about the strategy of teaching them to earn money, the strategy of teaching them to spend money. And the third one is the strategy of how to save money.
And this is my favorite topic when dealing with children.
Well,
Um, and,
tell,
and
tell me,
again,
tell me more about why it's your favorite. I'm curious.
so I think it's when we have children and we start, and I see this with my children, with my clients' children, as we begin to create strategies on their savings, right? So they're getting their allowances. They're now working, and they're bringing in this income. Holidays or birthdays come through, and people give them money. To be able to have them create a strategy that I'm going to take a third of what I make or what I get, and I'm going to save a third,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to put a third in a pot, and I can use that for school or whatever it may be. You know, Having them be able to come back and see how that money is growing is just looking at that their face light up when
Yeah.
they need to go out there and buy makeup or Lululemon, and they're capable of coming in there and saying, "Can I buy this? Well, I have the money. I've
Mm-hmm.
got X amount of dollars."
Yeah.
You know, my response to that is always, "Okay, well, how much does it cost?" And now actually, my daughter's 13. So I've started asking her, well, if you buy it, if this is the cost, let's figure out what the total cost is.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
they've
Yeah.
been learning, about taxes and all that other
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So this
Mm-hmm.
gives me an opportunity to really focus on her math skills and asking her, well, how much is the total cost? Do you have enough?
What parish am I in?
Um,
It's kind of hard. Xavier, am I in
right.
Orleans Parish?
Yeah. What what
Jefferson
what
Parish,
parish?
right?
What place in the
Um,
country? Right. So this is one of my favorite topics in talking about, because we can also, I think, another place is utilizing vehicles, and tools to be able to grow those monies. You know,
mhm.
if we're now putting those monies inside of a vehicle that's invested in the market,
Well, now you're going to
I
like
now can
savings
teach.
303. Okay. We're just talking about saving.
Well,
We're not talking about
I
investing, but I see where you're
I,
going.
I do, but look, I
I see
told you I
see
get
where you're
excited
going.
about this,
I see
right?
where you're going. Yeah.
So they get a statement that comes in the mail,
Yeah. Yeah.
on a quarterly basis. I now have the opportunity to sit down with them and say, look, you've worked hard. You made X amount of dollars. You've saved some money. Look how much it's grown.
Hmm.
Now, in some cases, it's down. And I've gotten a question that I want to know why my account is, why'd I lose money? I'm saving it, but I lost money. And
Hmm.
so now that gives us an opportunity to come back and explain, here's how things work. This is how the markets work. So when you start
You're like
teaching the,
6 steps ahead of me, but I like where you're going. So I'm gonna
so
take a couple steps
I'm telling
back if
you,
that's all right.
yeah, I get excited when we start
I,
talking about this, especially
I
with
know
kids, because of
I love it.
I've
I love
seen
you.
where, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen where I think I've told the example, earlier this year, where I had a client call me because her two girls wanted to know why they lost money in their account.
Yeah.
And my own daughter tells me, well, no, daddy, you're not explaining it right. Let me explain it. And that joy and that happiness that I
Yeah.
had at that point
Yeah.
where I'm sitting there listening to her explain to it. So go ahead.
Yeah,
Let's
you
take
so
that
so you
step
so
back.
you see this is I opened with saying Xavier's more the tactical guy. I'm more the strategy. And I want to come back to more philosophy and kind of big thinking before we get in the weeds of like opening bank accounts and
Mhm.
investment accounts and understanding the stock market. Is one of the things I love about teaching kids how to save money is we're teaching them delayed gratification. We live in a culture that we're bombarded with these ideas of instant gratification. You want to go get it. right? Put it on your credit card. Go buy it. Deal with it later. And I think by saving, by saying, hey, I want that Taylor Swift ticket and I'm going to save towards it, or I want that whatever it might be, I'm going to start saving towards it, is we're learning delayed gratification. And I think that is a very, very important skill in our culture, is to be able to see something and not need to have it immediately. So what saving
Mhm.
does, it starts to teach us that patience. It starts to teach us delayed gratification. And there's an element of, this kind of, I didn't talk about this in the spending kind of strategy side, but there's an element of self-control. I'm exhibiting self-control. I have money, right? But I'm not going to spend it on this because I have deemed a Taylor Swift ticket more important than
Mm.
a new pair of Lululemon, uh, whatever, pants, right? So that's what I like about talking about
Right.
the idea of saving. So you're kind of taking the step into the tactical. That's like, where do we save?
Right.
We save in a bank account. Okay, what if I have money that I don't need immediately that I want to take advantage of the stock market? We open up an investment account. Those are all the tactics. But we want to start teaching, right, instilling the value of saving. What does that look like?
Hmm.
Um, why are we doing it?
Right.
And then the value that, again, that we're instilling in our kids, daily delayed gratification. There's a
Hmm.
discipline. There's discipline to saving, right? Because
Absolutely.
whenever you save a dollar, you're essentially saying no to something that you could spend it on, right?
Hmm.
I mean, as
Yeah, you're
adults, I mean,
absolutely
there's
correct.
plenty of things I
Right.
want to go buy right now, but I got to save for retirement because no one's going to take care of me when I'm old, right?
Hmm.
I want to save for a vacation. No one's gonna pay it for me. I don't put it on credit cards,
Right.
right? So making a conscious decision to save for something.
See, Eric enjoys the philosophical side of the conversations.
I think it's
So I
important.
get excited. I get it. No, it absolutely is, because we have to know, like you said, we've got to know what we want to accomplish
Yeah.
before we can start putting the other pieces in place.
Yeah. All right. As some bonus material, or as we like to say down in New Orleans, lagniappe.
Lanyap.
Some lagniappe. Lagniappe is something for free. We talked about three things: earning money, spending money, and saving money. What are maybe some other ideas that you have on this topic um, of teaching kids about money?
I started to allude to it when I got excited and jumped ahead, right? Um, but I think with kids, having having something that they can look at that has their name on it, and they
Okay.
can
Yeah.
see the money growing,
Yeah.
right? Having one of those, now you see more and more kids, they have these debit cards,
Okay.
right? And it has their name on it, but it's attached to the parent's account. Um, I think that is a great way for us to begin teaching children about the value of a dollar. You know,
Yeah, you make a
go
really
ahead.
good point. I think there's an element where I talked about this idea about, like, kids have a hard time thinking abstractly. Money,
Hmm.
by and large, is abstract these days. I mean, it's hard to spend cash in some places. So it's really
Right.
easy when you have something tangible to teach a kid about money. Here's a dollar. You're going to go buy some bubble gum. It
Hmm.
costs 50 cents. You get 50 cents back. Now it's 50 cents. You swipe a card. So I think it's really, really important. And I get some pushback, like digital money. No, we have to teach our kids to spend and manage digital money. It's
When
abstract.
if you right, so if you think about that, and I'm going to go back to festival season, right?
Okay.
So a lot of these festivals now, they're cashless.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you have to teach children how to be able to utilize those cards.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, they have to be aware of, okay, if I'm spending 10, 12, $15 today, will I have enough to make it through the week if you're putting X amount of dollars on that card for them to utilize? So
Yeah.
I think it goes hand in hand that yes, we need to teach them, but we have to educate them on that value of a dollar and let them know that money doesn't grow on a tree.
Yeah.
This isn't an ATM machine. When
I
you
think,
spend $35, it's gone.
yeah, I like the push notifications on your phone. So whenever my daughter spends something, I get a push notification says, such and such $22.33 was spent on this debit card. If we can put
Hmm.
those push notifications to our kids, because there's like it's an extra realization. Like I swipe my card, I walk away, it's all done. Then all of a sudden I get boop, you just spent $35, and ooh, wow, you see it in writing, and you realize that that came out of my account, right? So I think it's important to
Right.
teach kids about digital money. Let's take a step back from that. I mean, the tactic here is go with your kid to open up a bank account, bring them with you, right? Or you talk in digital money is you can probably open it up on your mobile app, depending on your bank. Do it with your kid, and not only do it with your kid, and some banks allow you to put the app on their phone with access to just their account that they're on. Let them see it. Teach them to start looking because that's the world that we live in. That's the world that they're going to live in. We're not going back to cash, right? So we want to create these moments, these experiences where they're open an account and they can
Hmm.
check their balances and remind them to check their balance. Hey, you're going to school today. You're going to have coffee. Don't forget to check your balance, right? Check your balance. Check your balance. Check your balance. I'm probably a little I probably over check my balance, but every morning I check my balance every morning. Like I want to know what's in my account. Um, you have to. I talk to some people all the time. They're like, "Man, we never check our balance." But how do you not check your balance? How do you not know what's in your account to spend? You should check your balance. So that's something we should be teaching kids about checking their balance.
It,
So
it's it's similar to the old school of balancing your checkbook.
yeah, remember
Did you
those
did you
days?
ever did you
Yeah,
ever
yeah.
have to balance your checkbook?
I did, but when we were starting to spend money, you could still do digital banking. There's websites we could go to and
Mm.
check balances and see what's come out of your account. I mean, you balance your checkbook to know how much you had in your account, so you don't have to go to the bank and get a balance or call the bank to get a balance. But as soon as you're able to start going online and checking balances, became a little bit less important to balance your checkbook because
Right.
I mean, now I probably have 4 or 5 apps on my phone, no jokes. I'm constantly testing different apps. I have like 4 or 5 apps on my phone, not including the bank app, that I can check
Hmm.
my real-time balance on my bank accounts. Um, so yeah, I remember balancing checkouts.
Yeah.
What
Well, you being older than me, I didn't realize if you
I'm
had
me
the
older than
opportunity to
you.
do that because I don't remember doing it.
I'm not older than Xavier. Um, Xavier's an old man. One Langyap thing that I want to mention here that, and I alluded to this earlier. I didn't allude to it. I said it about this idea of being public with some of our money decisions with our kids. Now I know talking about money is hard. I think for a lot of people, talking about money is very difficult. They'd rather talk about other, controversial things than money. But I think that we want to involve our kids in some of our money decisions. So here's a scenario. Okay. You're out with your kid. Your kid wants to buy something. As parents, our first instinct is to say no. Well, why? Usually followed up with, we don't have money for that. End of story. Move on. Right. Now, sometimes we lie as parents. Yeah, we have money for that. We just don't want to spend money on that. So I think that if we as parents have goals that we're saving towards that involve our kids, we can say, hey, look, you know what? We're not going to spend our money on that, even though we can, because we're saving for Disney World, right? Or we're saving for a beach trip. Or we're saving because you want to go to college one day. So what we're doing is we're inviting them in to our thought process on on money. So we find areas that you're comfortable with to include your kids, right? If you're planning a vacation, involve them in the planning of the vacation. Hey, we can stay here it's more expensive. But if we stay here, then we might not be able to eat at the fancier restaurants. Or we can stay here, it's a little less expensive. But man, we can go to all these really cool restaurants, or we can do an extra day
Mm.
at the amusement park, whatever it might be. Right? We can rent jet skis for 2 days instead of one if we stay here versus there. What do y'all want to do? And again, even if money's not a concern for you, even if I've got enough money to do whatever I want, I still think we need to create these situations where you have some friction, where you have to make these decisions. Because you might be able to afford everything. I think it was Shaquille O'Neal. His son said, he said, "Dad, we're rich." And Shaquille said, "No, son, I'm rich. You're poor." Right? When our kids are in our house, they're living the life of someone who's got whatever they need. They're going to go off on their own, and they're not going to have access to daddy's money no more. Right? So we want to create these situations for them, and I think that's the
Right.
goal. Again, to kind of start tying this up is we want to create these situations because the strategy is to create financially independent individuals. We want to harden them off so that when they go off in the world, they're able to withstand the elements, the decisions that they're going to have to make. They've learned how to save, they've learned how to earn, they've learned how to prioritize, or they have the skills, they have the tools, the resources to continue to learn these things. I'm going to give you the final word.
If you guys have a topic that you would love us to discuss on the podcast, send us an email. Let us know. We're always looking for new ideas and discussions.
Yeah, y'all. If y'all like what you're listening, please share this around. And if there's a specific question that you have about kids and money, um, hit us up. You can find us at plan-wisely.com on our website, or email info@plan-wisely.com. Thanks for listening, y'all. Thank you for your support, for being loyal listeners.